The more I think about it, Luther Burden would look pretty good in a Kansas City uniform.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball with a slightly fun-sized episode of Locked On Mizzou for you once again with the NFL draft tonight. I don't want to drone on forever. I know a lot of you fans are going to be watching that, of course, with a couple of very prominent Missouri players quite possibly going in the first round this evening. So I want to talk about that, of course, and Marcus Allen and Peyton Marshall making their college decisions. Quickly, I do want to remind you this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And I'll tell you this, I had somebody say that my Luther Burden take to Kansas City this week was trash. They said, hey, I'm a fan of yours, but that was a really terrible opinion. And I have to say, I got a little bit defensive with the guy. Not because he disagreed with me, it was how he disagreed with me. To be honest, whether you think Luther Burden's a great fit with Kansas City or not the end of the world to me. But nevertheless, I am starting to disagree, or I'm starting to agree with that person. And I'm starting to change my mind a little bit. Initially, I thought, you know what? Hey, Burden, just like any good receiver, would be great with Patrick Mahomes, of course. But from the Chiefs' perspective, do they need another slot receiver, more or less? With Hollywood Brown already on the roster, Xavier Worthy, even Rashee Rice is more, I would say, slot-oriented than he is outside-oriented at this point in his career. But again, I'm changing my mind for a few reasons. Number one, Hollywood Brown is only under contract with Kansas City for another season. Rashee Rice is coming back from a serious knee injury last season, and possibly he's going to have a suspension coming his way for his role in a hit-and-run incident on the road maybe a year and a half ago at this point. So obviously he has proven to be not reliable whatsoever on a couple of different levels at this point. Hopefully that will change if you're a Chiefs fan. And Xavier Worthy, by the way, is definitely a smaller player, to be sure. But, I mean, gosh, Luther Burden compared to Xavier Worthy might as well be Calvin Johnson. I mean, Burden is not the biggest guy on the planet, but he's not that small. In fact, for a 6-foot slot receiver, 200 pounds, he's plenty big enough, in my opinion. And by the way, neither Worthy nor Burden is going to be expected to play 90% of the snaps for Kansas City next season. So, and also I will say I thought Brett Veach, the Kansas City general manager, had a pretty good point that it really only takes an injury or two at that position to get thin, for that depth to be, well, a problem really quickly. And we've seen that a couple times, at least from Kansas City over the last few seasons. And by the way, just one more final note here. Well, Travis Kelce, not exactly the youngest player in the world at this point, and he's had a lot of miles put on his tires the last few seasons with runs to the Super Bowl, a couple wins and a run all the way a second place, a runner-up last season's Super Bowl, of course. Regardless, that's a lot of games. That's basically 20 games the past 3 seasons. So, yeah, it'd be nice to take some pressure off of Travis Kelce. Well, not only in the playoffs, but obviously in the regular season as well. You saw Kansas City obviously tried to take some pressure off of Kelce during most of that season and just get him to the playoffs, it felt like, last year. So, on top of that, obviously I'm a believer in Luther Burden. I think all of the character concern stuff, for you everydayers, I won't bore you to death with this, so I'll just say it quickly. I think it's overblown. I think it's silly. I think he's a special type of player that is absolutely a first-round talent. And I think if he doesn't go in the first round tonight, I think there are going to be a lot of teams that needed a receiver who are kicking themselves. So while Kansas City, most of the national pundits seem to have the Chiefs taking an offensive tackle in the first round, maybe an edge rusher as well, especially on the former there. That makes a ton of sense. Really, Kansas City, this past Super Bowl, and I would say the Tampa Bay Super Bowl as well, they were basically non-competitive in those games because they couldn't block on the outside. It was really as simple as that. So certainly makes a lot of sense to take a tackle there if you're Kansas City. I don't know if there's one worthy of going 31st overall, though. That would be my question. So then what you're seeing is, I think a lot of Kansas City local people and people who follow the Chiefs specifically, notably, I would say frequent Locked On Chiefs guest Seth Kaiser has been saying he hopes the Chiefs take Burden 31st overall. So going to be an interesting night in the draft, as it always is. And by the way, I've heard some national pundits, including Bill Simmons, who's a big Patriots guy, say, hey, Armand Membou, the Tigers' former right tackle, he can't be ruled out as high as number 4 to Kansas City. So if that happens, well, Membou would definitely make history, because there are actually 2 guys who have gone 4th overall in the NFL draft. By the way, post or pre-merger here, it doesn't even matter. A lot of you, I think, probably remember Justin Smith going 4th overall to Cincinnati in 2001. Well, a far fewer number of you are going to remember in 1968 that Russ Washington, an offensive tackle, went 4th overall to San Diego that season. So if Membou does it, well, he's really going to join a long line of Missouri offensive linemen, usually tackles, that have gone in the first round over the years. That's been really a position, especially during the lean years for the Tigers. Look at somebody like Howard Richards. Well, somebody who still broke through into the first round into the NFL draft. Fortunately, well, Membou's been a part of some really good Missouri teams, and hopefully more, and indicative of that, this is potentially if indeed Membou and maybe Burden sneaks into the first round too, that would be the first time that Missouri has had 2 first-rounders in the same draft since Blaine Gabbert and Alden Smith went 10th and 7th respectively in that draft. And by the way, this is likely, almost certainly, going to be the first time since 2010-2011 that Missouri has had first-rounders in consecutive drafts. I mentioned Alden Smith and Blaine Gabbert in 2011. Well, Sean Witherspoon went in 2010, 19th overall to Atlanta that season. So a bunch of history could potentially be made tonight, a bunch of interesting places that both of these guys can end up. Really, Burden, I mean, honestly, he could end up just about anywhere. He really could. Hopefully for him, it's at a place with a premium quarterback like Kansas City. That would be a lot of fun. Buffalo, on the other hand, well, that would maybe be a little scary for me as a Kansas City fan. And coming up, Peyton Marshall and Marcus Allen have found their next homes, and along with Aidan Shaw, where they ended up, what did it say about their talents? I'll tell you in just a little bit. But first, you ever look at your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? And then suddenly Jimmy Stewart comes in and starts going, well, it's in Bill's house, it's in Fred's house. And you're going, hey, what are you doing with my money in your house, Fred? Well, here's the deal. When it comes to dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it seriously is easy to lose track, people. Well, this is where Monarch Money comes in. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. All-in-one convenience, easy collaboration. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. And since the basketball transfer portal window is closed, with the football window to be closed tomorrow on Friday, by the way, that means we know there are only 3 guys defecting from the team, and all 3 of them ended up in the Atlantic Coast Conference. In fact, Aidan Shaw, the first, of course, wound up at Boston College following, well, his sister, I believe, is at Harvard, so sort of following in her footsteps, hanging out with her a little bit, spending his last year of college in Boston. Certainly a lot worse places to spend your college years, I know that. And also Peyton Marshall, I should say, ended up closer to home, his hometown of Atlanta, with Georgia Tech, and also Marcus Allen also winding up back home at the University of Miami, following C.Y. Young, by the way, who also is a Hurricane now as well. And Young was Marcus Allen's primary recruiter there in his recruitment to Missouri. So as I predicted on the show, I thought Marcus Allen to Miami was kind of an obvious one. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. And same thing with Peyton Marshall in terms of, well, he kind of just went back closer to home. I don't know exactly why either young man decided to transfer, but as tired of, I think, as all of us get on occasion of the portal process and, just wanting some of these guys to stick around for a little bit longer, I do think it's tough when a guy just simply wants to go back to Miami, for example. Maybe he got tired of the Missouri Winners, whatever. His primary recruiter, C.Y. Young, leaves and goes to Miami as well. Just a good fit there. I'm just saying, I'm disappointed that Marcus Allen left. At the same time, it's hard for me to also say, well, there should be punitive punishment there, or he should have to sit out a season, or whatever it might be. I do think, though, if there's a contract signed, if there's an actual legal agreement in place, well, then you have to live up to said agreement. And according to Amanda Kristovich, well, Arkansas's NIL collective is doing just that. It's not just Nico Iamaleava making headlines. Well, his younger brother, Madden Iamaleava, who left before his NIL contracts expired, according to Arkansas, well, they're saying, hey, there's buyout language in your contract. If you leave early, guess what? You owe us some money. So I just thought it was fascinating there that on the squad, by the way, the last couple weeks, including coming up here later tonight, it's another reason why I'm keeping this episode a little bit shorter. But on the squad, we talked a lot about buyouts and how they've got to start becoming a more regular part of contracts at some point, you would logically assume. Well, I just think it's really interesting to note that, hey, according to Arkansas and their collective, I don't think there's any reason for them to lie about this particular detail. Well, they're saying, hey, there's some buyouts here. Multiple players, by the way, not just Madden Iamaleava, who left early. So bottom line, once again, don't make too many assumptions in the old portal, because who the heck knows what's going on here, and there's still a couple spots for Dennis Gates to fill. Could they be a couple shooters? I think that's really the biggest place Gates needs to look right now, just combing over this roster. That's just my opinion. But we'll just have to see what happens, and I'll certainly be here no matter what happens to cover it for you. And by the way, definitely check out Locked On the NFL Draft as well. If you're looking for a little extra knowledge on the draft, you got to go for Damian Parsons and Keith Sanchez. Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So until tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be talking about a couple first rounders for Missouri tomorrow on the podcast, I'm John Miller, and this has been Locked on Mizzou.